So I ended up going to Joe Taylor at Scalp Logic, and he ended up doing an SMP treatment on my head. It took like 3 sessions. The first one, when I was in there though, I will say I was like I was kind of nervous, right? Because I knew this was a long-lasting, permanent result, and so I really wanted to make sure that you know, that whatever this dude ended up doing on my head was like something that he had done before. I wanted to see results from other people, and you know, I really just wanted to know, like, man, are you gonna screw my head up? And I'm gonna be even worse off, you know, than I am right now. And so he definitely assured me that this would be something that I was happy with, you know what I mean? But it wasn't until I seen, like, he actually started putting the frame to my face, you know what I mean? That I was like, oh shoot, like this is like, I'm getting it back, you know? And like, within 45 minutes, like no lie, like Joe's not paying me to do this. This is legitimately, I'm a media consultant, you know what I mean? So I shoot videos all day. I wanted to hop behind the camera real quick and just tell everybody that I had probably the most, I just don't even know how to say it, you know what I mean? The most uplifting experience in regards to like, you know, feeling like myself again regarding this hair loss, right? Like through all the makeup, through all the kabokis and powders and like the way that I would cut it, you know what I mean? Try to leave it long in the front, essentially doing like a comb over, you know what I mean? As corny and as crazy as all that sounds, like I was that guy, I was doing those things, you know? And when I think back to it, it's just like, this guy gave me my hairline back, you know what I mean? Like today, I was all around town doing stuff, no hat, you know what I mean? No need for it, because I was myself, I am myself, you know what I mean? Like I'm able to go out and be like, as a matter of fact, to add to it, I always wanted like a shorter hair like this when I was younger, but I didn't have like the hairline for it, you know what I mean? Like my natural hairline kind of like dipped back a little bit anyway. I wasn't blessed with those good genetics, you know, in the hair department. So when I got this, you know, when I got this frame back to my face, you know what I mean? You would be surprised at like how important it is when it comes to like accentuating your features. And once you start to lose that frame to your face, or if you don't have a very strong one to begin with, it can kind of make the rest of your features on your face look kind of funny, and hence why we don't look like ourselves anymore. You know, your ears can kind of look big, your nose can kind of look funny and stuff, but when you get that frame back to your face, it kind of makes everything symmetric again, you know? So there's a science behind it, guys. Like there's a reason why when you lose your hair, you don't really feel like you anymore. And a lot of it is because you don't look like you know, you start to look like somebody else, which, you know, is what I think a lot of people suffer from, is like it creates an anxiety and a depression because you start changing without there being any control on your part, you know? You don't have a choice, you know? It's not like if you were losing weight, you know, assuming that it's from like just maybe an inactive lifestyle or something, you could get in the gym and you could do what it takes to get that body back, right? We've heard tons of success stories where people have actually taken the time and implemented the discipline, you know, and routine to like get themselves into great shape, and that's amazing. But hair loss isn't the same way. Like you can't really like work your head out to like make the follicle start to produce hair anymore, you know what I mean? There's a very cut and dry process to why people lose hair, you know what I mean? And I wanted to get into a few topics real quick though before we go down that road, because I think these are really important things that most people that are probably losing their hair are probably thinking about, but you don't hear a lot of talk about it. So hair loss really, it hurts you. It affects you psychologically, you know what I mean? That's a big part of it, is like when you're experiencing a hair loss, you know, somebody that's maybe trying to lose weight, or oftentimes I hear it compared to like a woman that's having like a breast reduction or augmentation of some kind, you know what I mean? She's like, yeah, you just want a different look. And I'm like, yes and no, you know what I mean? So yeah, of course you're wanting a different look. Nobody likes being bald, you know what I mean? Essentially, balding is associated with aging, and you know, although you can age gracefully, you know, nonetheless, I think that when you're aging, anybody feels the effects of time, you know what I mean? And we can all appreciate that in our youth is when we look and feel aesthetically our best, you know what I mean? So with that being said, I started losing my hair in like my early 20s, like 20, 21, 22, and it was minor, you know, it was a very minor loss that I was starting to experience up front. And I lived with one of my buddies, and like that was kind of the thing, you know, you like kind of like make fun of your friends, you know, for different little things, because we were all friends, all in good fun, right? But they kind of clowned me for my hair. They always gave me a hard time about my hairline. And there was another third roommate, and his name was Marcus, and he would always tell me like, just wait, you're going to end up losing your hair like me. And he was extremely accelerated along his balding process, along his hair loss, you know. he had a big patch in the back. We called it the baloney patch. You know what I mean? And that was kind of like the way that I got at him. He was definitely the senior of the hair loss candidates. So, you know, I made sure to always give him as good as I got as well. So anyway, Marcus was telling me, hey, this is gonna happen. It's gonna happen rapidly. And I can remember so steadily telling him, my man, that will never happen to me. I have a very minor hair loss occurring right here. And I thought that it was only going to last in the front. It ended up transitioning to the back probably pretty rapidly, but my acknowledgement of it took some time. You know what I mean? I couldn't see the back. I couldn't see what was going on back there. I was actually dating a girl at one point who said that she was around one of her friends and she told him, she was like, yeah, like I think he's extremely attractive, but he's balding and that looks old and that's gross. And I just remember like that like hit me right here, like super hard. You know what I mean? I was like, I'm gross? Like I had always felt like I was the man, you know what I mean? I always got like a lot of attention. I felt like I felt like I had a good rapport with ladies, you know what I mean? And so when I heard this, it just killed me inside, you know? I didn't feel like myself anymore, which hints why I say this is like a psychological illness, you know what I mean? It really is. I would argue to some people, and I'm sure if you haven't experienced the hair loss, you might say, no, you're crazy, you know, you've never experienced something like that, and that's why you're saying it. And in turn, I would say, I challenge that. I say that if you have not experienced the hair loss, the only way to explain it to somebody who's not gonna go through it, who hasn't gone through it, is that you're getting balder every day. I yet to see somebody who's gone through the hair loss process, the hairline just starts growing back, you know what I mean, without there being some sort of like supplementation or some sort of procedure, you know, essentially some sort of procedure, you know what I mean? I know nobody that's been able to naturally regrow their hair. I've heard a lot of wives' tales and snake oil and things like that, but I have yet to know anybody that can actually regrow their hair, you know what I mean, without a procedure being involved or something like that. And so that started to really affect me, you know. When I would go out, I would be imprisoned by a hat, you know what I mean, a beanie or a hat, you know, and especially if I was in like a nightclub or somewhere that didn't allow you to actually wear a hat inside, my night was over, you know what I mean? And anybody that's been going through a hair loss and using a hat or something like that to try to like hide their hair loss knows exactly what I'm talking about. It's just like, oh, I can't have a hat, like the night is done, you know what I mean? And so like people would always be like, no man, it looks fine without it, you know what I mean? And easy is that said by somebody that's not experiencing it, because what happens is when you see yourself in the mirror, that doesn't look like you. You know, that's not your perception of like who you are, right? Like you know who you are, you're the man, and then like you see this hair loss and it starts to go, especially if you're somebody that was always really social and you know, you felt like you had a strong aesthetic, right? You had a good look, individualized, you know what I mean? Like that was you know, maybe like the hair was a certain way, or maybe it was just part of your ensemble, but essentially, you know what I mean? You felt really strong. Well, when you start to lose your hair, you start to find yourself further and further and further and further away from that perception of who you are. You know, there's a couple things. It's like, one, we're talking about hair loss, but like what I really want to focus on is most of these guys that lose their hair before 30 years old. You know, essentially when you're younger and you're in your 20s and whatnot, you're doing your dating, you're doing your social stuff, you know, you're looking for a mate that you might marry for the rest of your life, right? And so these are the times where like we really want to accentuate our best features, right? We want to look our best, we want to feel our best, maybe be fit, you know what I mean? Like everybody wants a full long head of hair, you know? And when you lose that without choice, you feel like you're losing yourself without choice, you know what I mean? And if you're under 30 years old, especially guys that are under 30 years old, you know what I mean? You really feel like you're losing your identity. You're this guy that overnight, over 6 months, becomes 30 or 40 years old just based on losing his hairline. And that's not a good feeling, guys. So, you know, that's what led me to SMP. I think that when you're losing that hair, right, and you don't feel like yourself, and you're looking for a solution, and you're putting makeup in your hair, and you're doing all this crazy stuff, I think what you gotta remember is that these aren't permanent solutions, and so tomorrow you're gonna wake up and you're gonna feel trapped and imprisoned by that hat, by that makeup that you're putting in your hair, you know, by that temporary solution. And I mean, there's other things, there's hair pieces and stuff, that was really never my steez, you know, I would rather just like go baldy with it. But I think that a lot of people are willing to go to a lot of desperate measures, and even though it would vary, I think, as to what measures I would go to myself, I can legitimately identify and understand each one, you know what I mean? Losing your hair is a serious thing, and it makes you feel like somebody else. I want to reiterate that again. You feel like you're losing yourself when you're losing your hairline, and for that reason, I would tell anybody, seek a permanent solution, get educated about it, and find a service provider that cares about you and can provide the same work that you would feel comfortable with on yourself. I think that something you gotta remember is that there's a few types of baldness, right? There's male pattern baldness, and it comes in a couple different patterns, you know what I mean? You might just lose it here, you might just lose it back here, you might lose the entire horseshoe. Right here I call it the Mr. Burns. You might lose the entire horseshoe, you know, you got a cul-de-sac appear in your head, you know what I mean? And depending on how severe your hair loss is, also determines like how much SMP you would probably need. And you know, that would also dictate a few other things, the price, how many sessions, and different stuff like that. Those are all things you probably wanna get with the provider that you choose and find out before you have the procedure. I don't remember now exactly what mine ended up costing, but it was a few grand. But honestly, let me tell you this, I would probably pay a few grand times 3 or 4 again to have it all over again. I literally, I'm not BSing you when I tell you I wake up today and I'm still thankful for Joe Taylor and what he did to my hairline. I will call Joe on the phone sometimes, given, you know, we are cool, we are friends now since this point, but I would legitimately call Joe many times over the last 2 years and tell him like, hey bro, I just wanna let you know, like you really did something for me, you know, you really brought me back. I feel like Joe brought me back from the dead, to be honest with you know what I mean? Like I didn't have this hairline, I was hiding it under hats, it was getting worse. Like how much makeup could I put? Like how much kabuki, you know, without it looking unnatural. I remember if somebody wanted to like, hey, my hairline looks so unnatural when I was putting all these different products in it, you know what I mean? These concealment products that, a girl asked me one time, yeah, like, oh, let me see your hair, and she wanted to be cute and touch it, but like I knew that the fibers and stuff would come out on her hand, so I'm like ducking and dodging and stuff because like I could not have this girl's hands in my hair, you know? So you could imagine, like, if you're wanting to be intimate, if you're wanting to be athletic, if you're just wanting to be full contact or in the water, you know what I mean? There's a lot of restrictions that come from losing your hair, and there's not a lot you can do about it, you know? So with that, male pattern baldness oftenly is a genetic thing that's passed down, you know what I mean? And it can be from generations back, from your mother's side, from your father's side. It's really kind of hard to designate where hair loss comes from and on the genetic tree, but I can tell you this, is that you're predisposed to a lot of it, and again, once you start losing your hair, if that's what's in the cards for you, there's not much you can do about it, you know? So finding a permanent solution and something that's gonna make you feel okay and make you be able to go on with the rest of your life and not be impacted by this, you know, this hair loss, I suggest anybody to do it, you know what I mean? It's almost more psychologically, I would absolutely argue, it is more psychologically damaging to try to lie to yourself, and I think that most men do that. I think that they rarely ever are honest with themselves because we have such a like macho type of persona that's put on us, you know what I mean? Or expectation for us. I think that most guys won't be honest with themselves, you know, and say like, yeah, like I don't feel like myself, like I feel depressed, I feel anxiety, I feel scared, you know, that's the thing. We don't want to say that we're scared. I feel scared. When I was losing my hair, like not just the first like couple years, but like 10 years in when I felt like it was really maybe at its worst, like I was scared. I was like, what am I gonna do? Like what comes next? How do I combat this, you know? And either the people that did tell me, you know, information, a lot of it wasn't good information. A lot of it was motivated by wanting to take advantage of the fact that I was scared and didn't know what to do about my hair loss. And a lot of people were just trying to sell, you know, BS recipes, you know what I mean? Snake oil, and try to tell me about lasers and creams and all kinds of lightings and stuff, you know what I mean? That would like stimulate hair growth and whatnot. And it doesn't, you know, it just doesn't. That's the whole thing. With this SMP, you know, I'm able to get in the water. As soon as I get out of the shower, you know what I mean? It looks like I got a fresh cut. I shave my head every couple days with clippers. I personally don't do the razor shave, but I know a lot of people that do. And you know, again, you're probably buying yourself even a little more time if you shave with a razor. Me personally, I still got a little bit of texture, quite a bit of texture in my head actually, you know, in contrast. So I like to create this whole feeling of like, you know, when you touch my head, you could feel stubble. And when you look at my head, you can aesthetically see a hairline, you know? So that actually makes most people feel like, you know, I've got this full head of hair. And most people actually compliment me on it and say, man, your hairline's like so full, you know what I mean? How old are you? And I'll tell them I'm 35 years old, and most people don't even believe that, you know? So, you know, a lot of people talk about the pill for hair loss. The pill for hair loss is Propecia. And a lot of people don't know what Propecia is, but Propecia is a pill that was, you know, to my understanding, and I did take Propecia for a little while, so the information that I'm giving you comes from a medical professional, and that's that when you take Propecia, it is a drug that is designed to reduce men's prostate that have enlarged prostates, you know what I mean? So a side effect of this that they found out inadvertently was that it promotes hair regrowth, you know? So a lot of people will take it in after they've had like post-op procedure for a hair transplant or something like that, you know what I mean? Again, because it stimulates the hair growth, but a lot of people will take it, you know, just as a as a remedy maybe, you know what I mean, to try to regrow their hair. And I took it for like 6-8 months, and it does work in conjunction with minoxidil, which is Rogaine. I used it in like a foam type. I put it on my head, and then I would take this pill daily, and it did promote a little bit of peach fuzz that maybe got about that long in these corners, and then the rest of it was like a lot longer. So it did promote some hair growth, but it was really kind of abstract, and it really wasn't too much in the grand scheme of things. But yeah, I did do it, you know, and I hate to say that now because I think back on a lot of that, and I don't know what the side effects of those are gonna be, you know. Fortunately for me, I only took it for a small period of time, and they claim that the side effects could be impotency and, you know, lack of sex drive and things like that, probably even some more serious ones that affect your insides and organs that they're not telling you about. But I can tell you, I didn't experience any of those, luckily, but it wasn't the answer. You know, I didn't want to be on a medication every single day of my life, getting up for something that was going to give me, you know, this much peach fuzz. So one thing that I do remember Joe saying to me, and I kind of always carried this with me, was that when you have a bald head, it's not a choice. When you have a shaved head, it's a choice. You know what I mean? And that's the look that it looks like we have here with this type of procedure. It looks like that you have a very full hairline. You just opt to shave it down for a neater, cleaner trim, like a wet shave or a crew cut or something like that. You know what I mean? And to me, I always liked that. I felt like it makes it look like every day I pretty much have a clean haircut. You know what I mean? Like I just came out of the barber, nice clean hairline, nice and tight, right? So I think that a big part of this is you feel hopeless. When you're losing your hair, you feel hopeless, especially because there has yet to be any proven remedy or method that's actually gonna restore your hair. So you don't know if what you're doing is healthy, good, will it work, is it a waste of my money? And trust me, if you're somebody who's been losing their hair, you've probably been down that road. You've probably been scammed on a few things. You've probably shown up at some destinations thinking you were gonna find some answers, and you really were just finding more and more disappointment. I know that when I was losing my hair, there was points in times where like I could not wrap my mind around like why we can't solve this. Like we can transplant someone's heart from one body to a next. Like why can't we just solve this minor issue with hair loss? And you know, I always heard that stem cells were right around the corner. This is 13, 14, 15 years later, I have yet to see any stem cells. So anybody that's kind of like hinging on that and waiting on that, don't hold your breath, you know what I mean? I don't think we're gonna see stem cells in regards to like hair regrowth anytime soon. And if it does, I can't see it being covered by insurance for anything more than a cosmetic procedure. Although again, I would agree that it's probably psychological. You know what? SMP is actually really good for a lot of people that suffer from hair loss conditions other than male pattern baldness too. Like alopecia, if you have alopecia, you know what I mean? That's not a choice. That's not something that you wanted, you didn't ask for, and you're not necessarily losing your hair because you have male pattern baldness, you know what I mean? You might have both, it might be a part of it. But again, I think, and I'm not a doctor, so I don't know, but I think like a lot of people are predisposed to alopecia, you know, based on their genetic code. And so like, you know, if you have alopecia, a lot of times you'll still have the crown, you'll still have the hairline like I have here, but like the entire thing just kind of gets like thin, and you can almost see the scalp through it, you know, and that's a hair loss as well, but it's a different type. And I would imagine that a lot of symptoms are the same, though I've never had alopecia. I would imagine, yeah, you feel hopelessness, you know what I mean? You're losing your hair, you can't hide it, it's right on the top of your head, it's one of the first things that everybody see, and you start to look like somebody other than the person you know, so that can never feel good. That's why I turned to SMP, and I would probably do it again in a heartbeat, you know what I mean? Like, there's probably no questions asked.